Ancient Egypt once gave birth to a city unlike any other, a holy city of light. To become the new sun god, Pharaoh Akhenaten overturned 1,000 years of belief and poured the strength of an entire kingdom into the desert on the east bank of the Nile, where he built a new capital from nothing. There were no shadowed sanctuaries here, no traditional gods hidden in dark temple chambers. The entire city was made for sunlight. Light was law. Light was divinity. It was the most radical religious revolution in ancient Egyptian history, and the grandest royal dream Akhenaten ever dared to make real. What history remembers is Amarna's brilliance, its religious rupture, its shocking break with tradition, and the unmatched ambition of its pharaoh. But the bones in its cemeteries preserve a truth no royal record wanted to write. This city of the sun was not destroyed by war, and it does not appear to have died from plague. Its collapse is hidden in the broken bones, stunted growth, short lives, and exhausted bodies of ordinary people. This was not a city abandoned by the gods. It was a city built from human flesh and emptied by the overuse of human life. Akhenaten wrote a shining epic for the pharaoh, but countless unnamed workers wrote the crueler cost of that holy city through labor, hunger, injury, and early death. In most historical accounts, the story of Amarna begins and ends with Akhenaten. He turned away from Egypt's traditional gods, placed himself at the center of divine sunlight, and built an entirely new capital in the empty land east of the Nile. He named it Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten. Today, we know it as Amarna. Stand among its ruins now, and the place feels vast, exposed, and strangely distant from ordinary life. The green edge of the Nile lies on one side. Beyond it, beneath pale cliffs and open desert, the city stretches out in low foundations. Eroded mud brick, broken walls, empty streets, and the remains of temples once laid bare beneath the sun. This does not feel like Thebes, a city thick with centuries of memory and human habit. Amarna feels like a command made visible. A pharaoh pointed to the desert, and thousands of people were forced to follow. Akhenaten's vision fused religious reform, political control, and architectural ambition into one enormous project. He wanted a city where the sun did not merely bless the king, but seemed to speak through him. A city where faith no longer hid in the darkness of traditional temple interiors. Here, temples opened to the sky. Sunlight was not decoration. It was the central language of theology. In surviving royal images, the royal family stands beneath the rays of the Aten, receiving life, blessing, and divine favor directly from the sun. But to later generations, this revolution looked strange, even dangerous. After Akhenaten died, the religious experiment collapsed with stunning speed. The old gods returned. The capital moved. The city was abandoned. Amarna became one of Egypt's most dramatic ruins, a capital that rose suddenly, blazed brightly, and disappeared within a single generation. But if we keep staring only at the pharaoh, we miss the people who paid for the speed of that dream. A city does not build itself. Bricks must be made and dried. Stone must be cut. Materials must be hauled. Water must be carried. Food must be stored. Streets must be cleared. Temples must rise before a king's theology can become architecture. Akhenaten's sacred vision could only become a real city through the sweat and strain of ordinary people. And the non-elite cemeteries scattered around Amarna record with brutal clarity what that vision cost the human body. The most honest evidence for Akhenaten's holy city was not carved into polished temple walls. It was written into the bones of common people. Archaeologists and bioarchaeologists have studied the ordinary cemeteries around Amarna, where men, women, children, and young adults were buried, far from the world of royal privilege. These were not the elegant figures shown in court art. They were laborers, craft workers, haulers, servants, builders, and families who kept the city alive. Their graves were simple. Many bodies were wrapped in rough textiles and matting. Brave goods were limited. Many names have vanished completely, but their bones speak with a force royal inscriptions rarely allow. They show widespread nutritional stress. They show damage from long-term physical labor. They show trauma, especially in the spine. They show lives cut short. It is important to say this clearly. The decline of Amarna and the suffering of its people do not seem to have been caused by one sudden, citywide epidemic. Modern archaeological research has found little firm evidence that a single deadly outbreak destroyed Akhenaten. The tragedy of this city was quieter than that, and in some ways more suffocating. It was a slow disaster built from chronic malnutrition, relentless physical strain, childhood stress, repeated work injuries, crowded and difficult living conditions, and the crushing pressure of a capital built too quickly. A violent epidemic leaves memories of panic and visible traces of catastrophe. Long-term exploitation leaves patterns in the body, patterns that can still be read thousands of years later. Imagine the city in its living years. The sun rises over the eastern cliffs, and work begins early, before the desert heat becomes unbearable. Adult men carry loads until their backs ache and old injuries return. Women grind grain, haul water, prepare food, tend fires, raise children, and hold households together in a new city whose order is still unstable. Children do not remain children for long. In a state project built at speed, young bodies can be pulled into labor before childhood has finished. Stones must be dragged. Mud bricks must be shaped and dried. Walls must be raised. The rays of the Aten may have fallen equally across the city, but the burden below was not shared equally at all. Royal art celebrates light, abundance, and divine blessing. The cemeteries tell another story: delayed growth, injury, illness, exhaustion, and bodies worn down too early. Multiple archaeological studies support this darker picture. Many children appear to show signs of interrupted growth and long-term nutritional stress. Adult workers show evidence of severe back strain and trauma. The rate of early death appears strikingly high. In the South Tomb Cemetery, children and subadults make up a large proportion of the dead. In the North Tomb Cemetery, the picture is even more disturbing, with many burials belonging to children, teenagers, and young adults, the very ages when survival should have been strongest. Some researchers have suggested that this unusual burial pattern may point to a young labor force pushed into the construction of the city. We cannot use the word proof too carelessly, because archaeology rarely gives us simple answers. But the pattern is hard to ignore. Amarna was never only a city of religious reform. It was also a city of labor. And labor left marks. The worn spine records years of carrying weight. Fragile teeth preserve the memory of hunger. Children's bones reveal interrupted growth. Poor graves speak plainly about the low social position of the dead. This is the true historical value of Amarna. It allows us to step outside the official story of kings and gods and look at the ordinary people pushed to the edges of history. Their wounded bodies write a counter-history that royal texts tried to leave out. In the pharaoh's official vision, Amarna was an ideal city flooded with holy light. In the lives of common people, it was a place of exhaustion, hunger, and pain. That contrast is one of the deepest lessons in the social history of health. Human life and death are never shaped only by germs or epidemics. They are shaped by environment, labor, power, and the demands placed on the body. Long before infection arrives, malnutrition can weaken a person. Long before fever strikes, childhood labor can strip away resistance. Long before death becomes visible, years of injury can slowly destroy the body. The most dangerous force in Amarna was not one specific disease. It was the way the city itself functioned. The rushed pace of construction, the harsh demands of state labor, dense settlement, limited food, punishing heat, pressure on families, and an unequal distribution of suffering. The glory of religious reform belonged to the pharaoh. The physical cost was pushed down onto ordinary people. This is the hidden truth of Amarna. Great monuments are never built from brick and stone alone. They are built from human capacity. Every royal project asks bodies to spend themselves. Sometimes those bodies are fed, sheltered, protected, and remembered. More often, they are treated as the raw material of power. At Amarna, the cost of rapid construction was generations of ordinary people working hard, aging early, and dying young. From above, the city was a sacred landscape facing the heavens. From below, it was a place of relentless strain. The temples opened completely to the sunlight, but the laborer carrying the load had no chance to rest. The palaces glittered, but poor children struggled through hunger and hardship. The new religion promised life through the sun god, but the cemeteries show how fragile and humble human life remained. Even in death, the social hierarchy did not disappear. Royals and elites had tombs cut into the cliffs, places designed to preserve status, memory, and afterlife glory. Ordinary people were buried in simpler cemeteries outside the great spaces of power. Many were wrapped only in matting and rough cloth, with a few modest objects placed beside them when families could afford it. That small detail matters. These people were not cold archaeological data. They were sons, daughters, parents, workers, and neighbors. Someone carried them into the desert. Someone remembered their faces and voices. Even after the city was abandoned, someone may still have remembered that they had lived, worked, and suffered there. The cruelty is that official history barely wrote them down. Akhenaten's religious revolution became a major event in the history of Egypt. The suffering and sacrifice of thousands of common people survived only in bone. After Akhenaten died, Amarna's reason for existence collapsed. The traditional religious order returned. Egypt's capital shifted again. The holy city was abandoned. Buildings were stripped for materials, damaged by time, and left to weather in the desert. The city that had once demanded the labor of an entire population became an empty ruin. The workers who gave their strength to build the horizon of the Aten did not live to see the dream endure. And the city built through the exhaustion of so many lives survived only briefly after many of them were gone. That is the deepest sadness of Amarna. It was built to make a new cosmic order visible, but it ended by revealing an old earthly truth. Rulers imagine eternity, while spending the short and precious lives of people whose names they never intend to preserve. Today, when archaeologists walk through the ruins of Amarna, they are studying more than a heretic pharaoh or a revolutionary religion. They are studying an ancient population crushed by authority, speed, inequality, and labor. The mud brick homes, worker settlements, cemeteries, worn teeth, damaged bones, simple burial mats, and vanished names strip away the royal mythology and return the city to human scale. Amarna is no longer only a religious episode. It becomes a case study in ancient public health and social pressure. A city does not need war or plague to destroy its people. Ordinary stress, repeated every day, can be enough. Poor nutrition, overwork, child labor, crowding, extreme heat, repeated injury, and unequal access to resources. Over time, these everyday conditions can become a mass crisis of life and death. Sometimes what destroys people is not a disease. Sometimes it is the city itself. That is why this abandoned holy capital belongs in the epidemic archive. Its importance is not that it proves a plague can destroy a civilization. Its importance is that it exposes the hidden cost behind civilization. A ruler's grand vision can become a population's burden. A sacred capital can conceal a labor crisis. A monument built to glorify light and divinity can bury suffering beneath the ground. The irony is that Amarna became one of the best preserved ancient Egyptian cities precisely because it failed so quickly and so completely. Its short life froze its form in place. The brief religious experiment and the human cost behind it were sealed into history together. The royal dream vanished, but the evidence of ordinary people being used, strained, and forgotten survived across thousands of years. Akhenaten spent his life trying to build a holy city facing the rising sun. But the most valuable lesson he left behind teaches us to look downward, at silent graves, damaged bones, worn teeth, injured spines, and the forgotten people who carried the weight of a royal dream. So when you look at the ruins of Amarna, do not only ask why Akhenaten overturned 1,000 years of Egyptian belief, or why he became one of the most unusual pharaohs in history. Ask the questions history tried to erase. Who mixed the mud and fired the bricks that built the holy city? Who crossed the desert and dragged the stone that supported royal glory? Who watched children die too young and carried grief in silence? And who paid with an ordinary life and a human body for one pharaoh's dream of eternity? If you want to uncover more buried truths and follow the hidden costs of civilization through ancient cities, cemeteries, epidemics, and labor history, subscribe to the Epidemic Archive. And tell me in the comments, next time, should we uncover another forgotten ancient city or another buried history of the dead?